Hi everyone, my name is Sabeen Ali, and I'm the CEO and founder of AngelHack. How many of you guys have heard of AngelHack before? Oh, good, a good amount of you. Well, let me just explain the premise really quickly because it might be new to some. We organize hackathons all over the world. Very recently, you guys had a startup weekend hackathon. Very similar to that concept. We organize Saturday and Sunday, so weekend overnight hackathons. The big difference is that at our hackathons, 80% of our population is developers, and these developers must write code from scratch at our events, at the beginning of our events, and then at the end of the event, Sunday, they must demo to the judging panel what they created. From each one of our hackathons, and we organize 50 of them every year globally in various cities all around the world. We're talking about doing one right here next year. We pick one winning team to then turn into a full-fledged startup who we then accelerate and bring to Silicon Valley and put in front of hundreds of investors, other accelerators, and give them a ton of opportunities. So we really believe that honestly the talent that Silicon Valley should be looking at is talent outside of Silicon Valley. So we travel all around the world to create a bridge between Silicon Valley and the rest of the world. And a lot of great places just like right here that have amazing talent and really, really great startups that we want to put in front of the eyes of top-notch accelerators and VCs. So that's what we do. We do have the world's largest developer ecosystem. We have about 150,000 developers on our mailing list. And when I first started organizing hackathons, I was just awe-inspired by developers. In fact, at the first hackathon, within the first couple of hours, I was sitting with the developers, looking at all of the things that they were making, and I couldn't help myself, but I saw the business angle in every single one of the apps. I was like, you know how you can monetize this? Or you know how you can make money off of this? And that's just the way that my training is and how my mind works. And as I was having these discussions with developers, I said, I'm so impressed by what it is that you guys can do. One of the developers turned around and said, well, I'm really impressed by what it is that you can do. And I was like, what can I do? I don't know. I don't really have, a hard skill. So I was a little baffled. And he's like, well, you can get in front of rooms and talk, and you can go and sell things, and you can understand, the monetization strategy behind what it is that we're building. And right then and there, I had an aha moment. This is my light bulb. It went on. And I was like, wow, I actually do have a skill set, multiple skill sets, in fact, that could be valuable to this developer community. And I started realizing the value behind soft skills, or what people call soft skills. And unfortunately, because it's called soft skills, there's a negative connotation to it. But let me tell you something. Soft skills are becoming increasingly popular in Silicon Valley and also the rest of the developer community. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, which is communication skills, understanding how team dynamics works, understanding the importance of these skills, and how to integrate them and implement them in your everyday life. So really, understanding the more of the emotional intelligence part of being a coder and working well with others, which is a really important aspect of it. So my talk is how holistic hacking leads to developer happiness. We also call our holistic hackers whole developers. And what that means is that we're really trying to create the whole personality, the whole package behind our developers. So just to jump into it, the holistic developer is a concept in which we teach developers, designers, and entrepreneurs how to become more balanced and well-rounded human beings. We focus on the art of communication, team building, and the importance of mindfulness and emotional intelligence. Anybody out there right now practice mindfulness? A couple of people. Yeah, it's increasingly becoming more and more popular. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about this in a second. First thing is to understand communication. So it's very interesting. Communication and language is our most distinct human capability, and it underlines everything that it is that we do. And considering this, it's surprising how neglected communication has been in the business world. Communicative acumen can increase team harmony, diffuse conflicts, and salvage reputations. So a big part of holistic developer concept is communicating effectively. In my team, we have about 25 members that are dispersed all over the world in places like India, Latin America. We have somebody in Vietnam. We have another person in Paris. We have a couple of people in Canada. And a good portion of our team is also spread out in the US. It's really, really important for us to create very effective communication tools and techniques so that everyone can understand and be efficient in our work. What we practice is communication style inventory and communication style flexibility. So what that basically means is when we have a new team member join us, we run an assessment to understand what type of communicator they are. So a lot of you guys, I think in your organizations probably do a Myers-Briggs to understand what your personality type is. It's similar to that. The thing is with Myers-Briggs, your personality changes as you change and as it should, right? You mature and you gain experiences, etc. So unless you're doing this Myers-Briggs over and over again every 6 months or every year, it tends to fluctuate and become a little irrelevant. Whereas your communication style is something that, to be very honest with you, is embedded within you. And as you keep communicating and working on your communication skills, it only becomes more refined. The different types of communication styles, there's action communicator, there's a people type communicator, there's a process type communicator, and there's an idea type communicator. And that's who I am. I'm an action, people, process, idea communicator. What that means is in my regular communication, I'm thinking about what needs to happen first. And that makes a lot of sense. I'm the CEO, I'm driving a lot of different initiatives. The second thing I think about and talk about are people, and then process, and then idea. I always tell everybody that I'm the doer, and all I need is a dreamer, and I can make those concepts come true. So a lot of people on my team, I try to assess what type of communicator they are, and it's very helpful in understanding, hey, you know what, Brian is an idea communicator. He's gonna come to me with these lofty ideas, and I have to hone in my my thinking around brainstorming, et cetera, and understand that, Brian's gonna talk about a lot of different ideas, but I need to bridge that with my action communication and figure out how we can meet in the middle. Otherwise, if we're like this, and we're communicating about ideas, and I'm thinking of how to make these things happen, things will never get done. So we both know how each one of us communicates. And now we kind of laugh about it and say, okay, hold on, let me rephrase this in a way that you're gonna understand. And that way it's a lot more helpful for us to actually collaborate. So I would highly recommend, if you guys are leading a team, for you guys to look at an assessment called Communication Style Inventory. And it's a quick, I think 25 question inventory, and it gives you what type of communicator you are in a normal situation, and also what type of communicator you are in a stressful situation. So a lot of people tend to switch their communication style when they're stressed out or they have a lot of anxiety. Makes a lot of sense, and it's good for you to understand and adapt to that, especially if you're working with a team that has a lot of tight deadlines or a lot of stress and high pressure. Communication goes well beyond just getting along with people. It means being able to deliver persuasive, trenchant messages and get your point across and compel others to do things. So a lot of salespeople, marketers, and spokespeople are masters at communication. And developers would do well to learn what could be one of the most powerful tools in their soft skill arsenal. So, not yet. So 3 things that you can do to immediately help your communication style and process. The first thing is to know your audience. So know who you're speaking to, understand how they communicate, and if you can, you can alter the way that you communicate to match their communication style. If I'm talking to somebody and I'm realizing that they're very passionate and they're all about the community, and this is somebody that I'm trying to persuade and I'm trying to sell, a hackathon to or a sponsorship to, I'm immediately going to shift gears, and rather than talking about this is how we get things done, I'm going to talk about the larger vision and the mission and how it impacts people. And this is a very easy skill. Really what you have to do is practice your listening skill to be a better talker. Keep it simple. How many of you guys have heard of the KISS rule? Yeah, what is it? Keep it simple, silly. Okay, I have a slightly different version of it. Anybody else know the different version? Keep it simple, stupid. So, silly is great. And it's just that, right? I think that especially developers have a lot of knowledge that they can impart on people that they are speaking with. And there's a lot of technicalities and subject matter expertise that go into explaining something. However, the rule is keep it simple and keep it concise. And that way you can start to get to communicating more and understanding really what the needs are with the person that you're communicating with. Again, I manage a big team. I work with a lot of people all over the world. And the one big tell that I can immediately pick up on with somebody who's either nervous or underprepared is when they start word vomiting. When the words just keep coming out of their mouth and they're talking in circles and they're not really making too much sense. And I'm just, either looking at them or on the other end of the line, just waiting, like it's kind of like handing them rope, that it's like, your tell is showing. So, if you're underprepared or if you're nervous, first I would always recommend to take the time to prepare. Winning is way more about preparation than actually, what it is that you do when you show up. But, what I would recommend is if you find yourself in that situation, just calm yourself down, take a deep breath. If you are underprepared, try to be sincere and honest with your audience or whoever you're with and work your way through it. I personally think that that's a much better approach than hanging yourself with your words. I tend to be a very concise person. I think that people get a little bit intimidated by, how kind of precise and sharp I am with my words. So I have to work on the opposite. But I know that, knowing that I'm an action-oriented person, I know that I need to start incorporating a little bit more color in my dialogue. And then be confident. It's so important to make sure that you're making eye contact with the person that you're speaking with. Again, a lot of developers struggle with public speaking and being in larger groups, and confidence has a large piece of it. To be confident, you have to be prepared. And that's definitely something that, anyone in this room can practice. Just prepare, even if it means that you have to write down what it is that you want to talk about or write down bullet points of the things that you want to convey. It's really, really important for you to be confident when you're speaking in groups. There is going to be a question and answer part at the end of the talk, but if anybody has any questions or comments, you guys are more than welcome to raise your hand, and if I can answer it right here and right now, that's great. If anybody else has ADD like me, I'll forget by the end of the talk, and that's why, it's good to just kind of handle these things right now. And if you guys are thinking something, I'm sure someone else in the room is as well, so I encourage you to ask questions. Okay. Yeah, action, people, process, idea. Yeah, and you can Google communication style inventory. Team building. So in any organization, there are teams involved. And developers will need to interact with team members. Shocker. Yes, it's not just your computers that you have to interact with. There are also human beings involved in working with the team. And these could be other developers, these could be project managers, these could be people on a marketing team, administrators, executives, etc. So it's important for developers to know how to manage and navigate team dynamics. Questions the whole developer should be prepared to answer. How does one manage team member roles and responsibilities? Where will each team member be more effective? What if a team member doesn't deliver? What if there's a conflict? Is there a potential for misunderstanding when working with multicultural teams? When should a leader become a follower? Has anyone ever been in a situation where they've kind of been at a loss in their team dynamic situations, where there's been a conflict, or you just can't convey your point, or for some reason you just can't connect with another team member that you're working with? Nobody? Yeah, I would assume that it's kind of everyone, right? If you worked in a team, and even if you're still, still in school, there's project teams, et cetera, and we see all these types of team dynamics. Now, in my studies, I studied organizational development. I also studied change management. In any type of team, you have different types of personalities, and you can't help it. Not everyone on the team is going to be the encourager and be the person who is moving the project forward and easy to work with. And you don't want this either. You actually want a variety of different personalities. There is going to be someone who's the blocker, who's known as the gatekeeper, and this is important, because you want to make sure that you're not rushing into and impulsively making any type of decisions or strategy. There are going to be people who are critical of every idea that comes up. You have to learn how to manage and work with these individuals, and actually how to leverage their personalities as skill sets rather than making it impede your progress. So here's what you can do to ensure that you're actively working towards a stronger team. Identify strengths and define roles. So in my company, we practice what we call strength-based leadership. Anybody heard of this? A couple of people? Great. So strength-based leadership is basically a philosophy about focusing on your strengths and letting everyone else take care of the other stuff. Right? So everyone has weaknesses, and I can tell you, of all of the people on my team, they are the folks that make up for my weaknesses. I am horrible at making PowerPoint presentations. And after a lot of trying and trying to get my thoughts on this PowerPoint presentation, I ended up just tapping team members to say, hey, look, this is not my skill set. Can you, I'll write the script, I will sit next to you, but I need someone to visualize all of the things that are going on in my head. I just can't do it. And so now my team members know that. I'm not allowed to ever make a PowerPoint presentation, and I have some really excellent people on my team that just excel, and again, I appreciate the skill set. But that takes a couple of things. It takes introspection, it takes confidence to say, hey, I'm the CEO, but I can't do something as simple as put my thoughts down cohesively and effectively on a PowerPoint presentation. I need help. And there's a lot of people on our team as well that they have a number of different skills that we support, we accentuate, and the way that we do that is by letting them focus on those skills and not hammering things that honestly, it's not worth our time to go and train, Robert on how to do public speaking when his skill set is working one-on-one in groups in our community, going to community events, going to networking events. Why are we forcing someone to add another skill? Why aren't we accentuating and spotlighting and highlighting what it is that they already do? So strength-based leadership is very, very important. Set goals and share progress. So it's really important to have a transparent team and make sure that you are very clear with your team on what each other's goals are and what everyone is responsible for. A trick for you guys to know is that any time that you are setting goals within a team, don't do it behind closed doors. Put it on, now we have Google spreadsheet, etc. Invite everybody to the party. Employees are much more likely to meet or exceed their goals if their peers are part of the goal setting process and are aware of their goals. And that just makes a lot of sense. If there's more than one person holding us accountable, there's a lot of psychology that goes into making sure that we don't want to let the entire group down, especially our peers. Sometimes it's okay to let a manager down, and as long as only one person knows about our goals, then it's kind of easier to skirt around them, but not when an entire team knows. You can hold each other accountable. Establish a culture. It's so important to have a positive culture of transparency and communication. And honestly evaluate needs and open communication as well. Any questions around team building? Let's move on to one of my favorite topics, mindfulness. So mindfulness is not a new concept. Eastern religions and Eastern culture have been utilizing mindfulness as a powerful tool for many, many centuries. And more recently, however, mindfulness has started to gain a foothold here in the West. And mindfulness is a simple concept. Be aware of and present in the current moment and be attentive, mindful, of your every thought, feeling, and action. I just said it's simple, and then I just said be aware of everything. But really what it means is, to be in the moment. A lot of us, and in particular, in the tech industry, a lot of us in Silicon Valley, we move so fast. Honestly, there are days that I can't tell you what I wore the day before or what any of my coworkers were wearing because my mind was just in a million different places. And that's a skill set that honestly, it's not very hard to acquire. So like any skill, it requires consistent practice over time. But anyone and everyone can do it, like simple breathing exercises for 10 minutes at a time, or making sure that you're taking some time out for yourself, 10 minutes, even after you wake up, just to be mindful and present. Goal setting. So when you wake up and you open your eyes every morning, if you actually just take 10 minutes to set your intention for that day. My intention for today is to not eat as many donuts as I ate yesterday. Or my intention for today is to do one random act of kindness. If you can start your day off with that, it's kind of like a daily reminder and a daily boost towards being the person that you want to be. Mindfulness is actually very helpful during times of crisis as well. Taking a moment to yourself to breathe and to take in the situation and then to actually have a collective response is tremendously useful. There was a study that said that, in moments of crises or argument, if people were just to stop and take a deep breath for 10 seconds, the outcome of that argument could drastically change. So if we're just constantly running our mind in our stress mode and all of our hormones and all of our neurons are firing, it's not a good thing. You're not going to come up with a reasonable outcome. Really what you have to do is return yourself to a calm place by being a little bit more mindful of your situation, your action, your words, the environment that you're in, and then respond collectively. So how can you start being more mindful? Be present. Be aware of your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and then breathing exercises and meditating. And then emotional intelligence. Anybody know what emotional intelligence is?
It's just like normal intelligence, except you're more mindful of other people's emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's like normal intelligence. However, it has a lot more to do with emotions of your emotions and the emotions of other people around you. So emotional intelligence is the ability to identify, assess, and control the emotions of oneself, of others, and of groups. When people talk about being able to read people or even just being perceptive, they're referring to their degree of emotional intelligence. Emotionally intelligent people are able to navigate social situations and adapt to different people and groups. And even more than traditional intellect, emotional intelligence is a huge predictor of success. So they're starting to learn that you can have a ton of degrees and you can be a subject matter expert in so many different areas, but if you don't have emotional intelligence, which means control over your own emotions and the ability to perceive the emotions of others, then it's not as powerful. And so it's really, really important to be able to understand your own emotions and also predict others. It explains why the most charismatic candidate, even if he or she is not the most intelligent or qualified one, gets the job or promotion. People can connect with these individuals because they have taken the time to connect with themselves. It's a highly useful, even critical skill to have. Where to start when taking a look at emotional intelligence? Reflect on your own emotions and ask others for their perspective. So for me, emotional intelligence is all about being okay with yourself. And if you're okay with yourself and you become aware of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, how you communicate, trying to and starting to embrace your failures, when you can kind of, get over yourself, that's really when you can start focusing on other people. And that's the skill set that everyone has to master when they're working with groups or when they are in a position like mine where they're trying to sell to a lot of people and positions of power, and making sure that, you're not a factor. A lot of people, say, oh, well, they can't, I can't work with that person. They're too insecure. I can't even give them feedback, et cetera, et cetera. And honestly, that person is not, to me, in my mind, emotionally intelligent or emotionally mature enough to work in a high-functioning team. So if you want to become emotionally intelligent, if you want to be successful, first you have to deal with yourself and make sure that there's a lot of self-care and self-understanding. Emotional intelligence is all about working with others and understanding them. The way to understand other people is to understand yourself. And be observant, take the time to notice other people's moods, other people's perceptions of you, perceptions of themselves. And these are all things that you can ultimately take advantage to motivate them and work better with them. And then explore the why and keep practicing. Emotional intelligence is not something that, or any of these skill sets that you can, just acquire overnight. This takes a lot of practice and a lot of honing of your skills, but the great part is that these are skills that you don't necessarily need to sit in a classroom to learn. You could practice this every single day when you're buying your coffee, when you're getting your tires changed or your oil changed or whatever it may be, at home with your siblings. You can always take the time to be present, understand how this person's communicating, understand what they're going through, and then start altering the way that you interact with them. A work-life balance, this is so big for developers in the tech industry. They are working 15 hours straight, sometimes even more. It's so important to have a balance here. So too much of anything is detrimental. Just like too much chocolate will make you sick, too much vitamin A can actually be lethal. Too much work is detrimental to one's mental and eventual physical health. Being able to balance work with hobbies and social life will lead to a happier, more fulfilling life. In my company, I practice the 100%, 80% of the time rule. And essentially what I tell my team is that if you can't give me 100%, I don't want you coming to work. If that means that you have to work 4 days a week, if that means that you work 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, I don't care. To me, what I'm looking at is a work that you're producing rather than how much you're working. And this doesn't necessarily apply to every single industry or every single job. Obviously there's jobs where you need to clock in and clock out and put in your 8 hours or more. But that being said, I've noticed time and time again with myself and with my coworkers that if their life isn't balanced, like if they aren't taking the time to go to the gym and spend time with their family or even have dinner out, a couple of nights a week, they're just constantly hammering at work, their quality of work actually goes down. And so that's not what I want from my team at all whatsoever. I absolutely encourage them to go out and get a life. I think that it's so important for everyone to understand this simple concept. More is not better. And that's honestly generally across the board in life. Even with money, they're doing tons of tons of research saying that more money doesn't necessarily lead to more happiness or better quality of life. And doing more work doesn't necessarily mean that you're working better. Start implementing the following into your everyday life to see what effect it could have on your happiness. Alone time. Again, in Silicon Valley, and I'm assuming that a lot of other parts of the world as well, it's impossible to be alone. Even when people are alone right now, they're on Facebook, they're on other social media sites, and that's not really being alone. Being alone means turning off all of the devices, all of the distractions, and really trying to check in with yourself. And a lot of the times people don't even realize the physical ailments that they're experiencing. Sometimes you could be walking around with a headache or a stomach ache or back pain, but you're so distracted by life and people and your devices that you don't even take the time to kind of do an inventory of your body and how you're feeling. And it's so important to do it, and it could take 5 to 10 minutes every single day and really change your health for a very, very long time. Disconnect after hours. Again, nowadays with phones and our email being connected to our phones, it's hard to disconnect. And for me, when I was in school, I couldn't wait to get a job. And the reason why was that, well, at least you don't have to take your job home. At least, like with school, you got homework, you got projects. It's like this never-ending, brain exercise. But with jobs, you can clock out and that's it. And boy, did I get that wrong. Especially being the CEO of a company, it's constant for me. But I'm really trying to discipline myself that after a certain time, 6 p.m., I'm done, I'm logging out. It's very, very hard for me to practice, to be very honest with you, but I have 2 little ones at home, and they help distract me from work, and I just need to do, that last bit on my part to completely and fully disconnect. I feel like that if I don't, I'm actually doing a huge disservice to myself and a big disservice to my family life as well, where I'm not able to really give anything 100%. Get out of the office together. It's really, really important and might be awkward at first to go have lunches together, to go, grab a drink after work if it's possible, or, even if you bring your lunch to sit down and eat together. I think, that type of team bonding is so important. Accept your limitations. Know what you can and cannot do. If you're in a position where it does require you to work 15 hours a day and you just can't, you need to have an honest, check-in with yourself and an honest dialogue with your manager to make sure that you're creating a lifestyle for yourself that you can sustain and that, you're going to be happy with for many, many years to come. Get moving and eat well. So these are all, that's kind of the basic. Be healthy. Treat your body like a vessel, and make sure it's a machine just like anything else. If you had a vintage car, you would take great care of it. You would only put the greatest gas in it, and you'd wash it, and you'd basically make sure that no one was trampling on it or mistreating it. Your body is the same exact way, and the same concept should apply here. Social responsibility. So with great power comes great responsibility. This is something that's incredibly important. We try to teach all of our whole developers. In Silicon Valley right now, we have this epidemic of what we call programmers. And these are basically people, I've unfortunately had my fair share of run-ins with programmers. And here's what happens, and I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with it. There's, a lovely developer that's sitting at home or in their colleges or whatever it may be, coding something that's absolutely fantastic. It's a breakthrough technology. And they go out there and they start showing the world. And then a couple of investors get their hands on this nice little developer. And they say, well, we're going to give you a couple of $1 million. And by a couple of $1 million, it's usually 5 million or more. So for somebody who, for the most part have been an introvert most of their life, probably, still has their fair share of student loans, all of a sudden they're getting fame, acclaim, and a ton of money and being put on a pedestal for something that they created. All rightly so, great work should be recognized. But there's this huge gap, and there's a major learning curve that nobody's looking at. Nobody's giving coaching to this developer. No one is taking the time to say, hey, this is how your life is going to change, and here are all of the responsibilities that are now being put on your shoulder from taking on this investment. Now you have all of this stress because you're taking on investors' money, and now you have to hire a team, you have to manage a team. So basically what happens is that these programmers either go crazy with power or they implode, and a lot of people are affected. And it's really unfortunate. I personally think that it's a huge disservice that we're doing to the technologists in our community, and it can be prevented. And one of the things for us to take a look at is social responsibility. If this is one of your tenets, if this is one of the things that you hold on to and hold near and dear to, then I personally think that we can avoid a lot of this programmer culture. This me first entitled thinking could go right out the window if people are thinking about their inherent duty to their community and their environment around them. So we're each responsible for the environment that we're in. And in the workforce, this relates to working well with others, not making a project all about themselves, but rather making it a collective effort. Outside of the workplace, we interact with one another, and the relationships we build create an ever-expanding network of friends, family, acquaintances, and community. And the network is intertwined. You don't just separate, especially nowadays, you don't just separate your personal life from your professional life. A lot of my coworkers are actually my best friends. And I have to maintain, my relationship in both realms and do it in a way that I'm doing a service to them professionally and personally. A lot of the times that I'm talking to my coworkers, I'll say, okay, as your boss, and I hate that word, so I never say it, but as your manager, or speaking professionally, here's, what I need of you, etc. But hey, Jessica, this is what I'm going to tell you. Taking off my professional hat and I'm putting on my friend hat right now, here's the advice that I give you. And it's never that far away from, what I need from her professionally, but I need to be able to have both of these relationships, because ultimately that's the way that life works, and this is the way that startups are going to be. You're going to have this intertwining of relationships, and we have to start to realize that. The idea of social responsibility rests on how we interact with and affect those around us. From maintaining personal relationships to contributing to the betterment of one's community, social responsibility must be ingrained in a holistic developer's DNA. So what does this look like in terms of action? Care about something larger than yourself, give back, be kind, and support something that you care about. So all of these things lead to a developer being happier. This is tried and true. This is researched. It's very, very clear that the data says that if you practice these things, you'll be more productive, you'll be more persuasive, you'll have a healthier lifestyle, you'll be more successful, you'll be more articulate, you'll be able to adapt in different social and business situations, and you'll have a positive impact on the world. And these are all, again, we call them soft skills, but they're so important that they can really, really change the way that we live. So once again, thank you all so much for listening to my Holistic Developer talk. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.